That was Lonesome Loser, back to 1979. Not many people can say they've written a top 10 US single, but the man we're speaking to today, David Briggs, has that song getting to number 6 on the US Billboard charts all those years ago. David, thank you for joining us on 101 FM.
My pleasure, Jason.
I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, and I'm glad I've tracked you down. Of course, you were in the band Little River Band from 1976 to 1981. Since then, you've done all sorts of things, like being a lecturer at Victoria University. You have the production workshop recording studio. You're working with many new and old bands, but let's go back to that song and the inspiration behind it, Lonesome Loser, that really stamped you as a very talented songwriter.
Well, thank you very much for that. It was the most played song in America for 3 weeks. It was an incredible period of time, and it was a terrific achievement for the band, and I was thrilled to the back teeth.
Well, you were the second guitarist after Ricardo Formosa. He was the original one. You played on 4 studio albums, 2 live albums, some compilation albums. You were there with the band from 1976 to 1981, really their most productive and successful period. Tell us about joining the band, because they were already a supergroup effectively, weren't they?
A supergroup by name, not a supergroup financially. I think that their first record sold like 20,000 in Australia, never released in the US. Then they released After Hours, and I don't think that sold so well. Rick Formosa came up to me. He comes up and says, I'm leaving the band. Would you be interested in me having your name thrown into the ring? And I went, oh, yeah, okay. I came back to Melbourne at the end of the week. Glenn Wheatley called me up. I went in for a meeting with him. Glenn was the manager, and he said, look, we're looking at getting another bass player. I'd been working with George McArdle at Peter Poynton's Hotel in Carlton. I said, I know just the bloke. And George and I went for an audition. George and I got the gig, and a couple of weeks after that, we're on a plane straight to the UK for a couple of concerts there, and then straight off to Germany to tour with the Hollies. So it was all a bit of a whirlwind experience.
Well, you were part of the classic lineup along with B. Birtles, Glenn Shorrock, Graham Goebel, Derek Polici, and of course you and George McArdle and yourself, David Briggs, were part of that classic lineup. You were inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame in 2004. How magic was the chemistry between all of you, particularly in the first couple of albums you recorded with the band?
It's a long way there. Had been released in the US. Wheatley had been to the US and got a deal with Capitol, and that was just starting to chart in Jacksonville, Florida. We were straight into touring with the Average White Band, Little Feat, Jimmy Buffett, a whole range of artists. We were a pretty ambitious group of young Australian musicians who were determined to make a mark, and we did, and welcomed by all of those American bands that I mentioned. When we toured with the Doobie Brothers, they used to drag us out of our dressing room and get us to go and play with them, with the mentality of, well, you know, you guys are going to be big, and we want to be able to say, we remember you when you supported us. Then it was back to Australia to record Diamantina Cocktail. And at that stage, we got a US producer, John Boylan, who was a producer from Epic, a lovely bloke, a great psychologist, which is one of the really important things that a producer does need to be. And he had produced the first Boston album just before he came down to Australia, and which had sold about 13 million records. He cared about us on a personal level, which was an important thing for our youthfulness. He was a great producer, assisting us, focusing us on writing really for the American top 40 charts. It was a great professional marriage. We did quite a few records with John, and he was a lovely bloke.
Well, I'm not surprised that all the US artists were so impressed with what you were doing on stage, because the way that you could replicate the vocals with Birtles, Shorrock and Goebel, that blend was incredible. Your guitar playing was so tight. Of course, George McArdle, excellent bass player. Derek Polici, fantastic on the drums. But you must have learned a lot seeing all these great producers, including George Martin, in action. And you started to produce Australian Crawl. Tell us about that experience, and you kind of helped discover the band.
We went down to this pub in Carlton, which was the Polaris Inn, And the Aussie Crawl had only been together for about 3 weeks at that stage, although they'd been together in varying stages prior to that with different band names. I saw the band and I thought, James, I immediately had a sense that James was a star. I liked a lot of the songs, so I went up and introduced myself after the show and asked them would they be interested in my being involved in assisting them to focus their material a bit more and maybe try and get some interest with EMI. And I worked with the band for a year, rehearsing the band, rewriting their material with them. And during the course of that time, we did some demos. EMI bit on the demos. EMI had signed them for an album. So we did The Boys Light Up, and, as they say, the rest is history.
Well, from that Boys Light Up album, let's hear a song that David Briggs co-wrote with James Rain, Hoochie Goochie Fiorucci Mama, and we'll continue our conversation with David Briggs after this. That was Hoochie Goochie Fiorucci Mama from the Boys Light Up album, co-written by our guest today, David Briggs, produced by him as well. David, of course, the second lead guitarist in Little River Band. You've done many things post Little River Band. You left the band in 1981. And one thing you've done for a long time is lecturing at Victoria University. Tell us about that and how you share your expertise and knowledge to students.
Victoria Uni headhunted me. I'd set up a studio since 1979 in Melbourne called the Production Workshop. Digital audio was quite predominant by then, and I'd been working with digital audio with the new technology being the computer interface, and since it had come out, I had great students, and many of the students who'd been through up into diploma level were very complimentary about wanting to stay on at uni at degree level to be in my classes. And I was very proud that some of those students were hired by some of the major studios around Melbourne and Australia. So I was thrilled to the back teeth that I'd been instrumental in their starting.
Fantastic that you can give back to an industry that you have done so much in. I mean, when you look back at the Little River Band days, what was your favourite album and what's your favourite song from that period?
I'll give myself a pat on the back and say The Lonesome Loser is one of my favourite songs within that period, really because I wrote it and I was so integrally involved in the arrangement and the design/writing of the tune. I think Reminiscing is a great song of Graham's. There was a time when the band was on fire creatively and really writing some really good songs. Cool Change with Glenn Shorrock from Glenn, that's a great tune. Glenn had his 80th birthday a couple of weeks ago, was invited to his party. 2 weeks after that, he and Brian Cadd, who's another one of my mentors, who I played for Brian at one stage, they were both playing at the Palms, the casino in Melbourne. Good old Glenn, in his infinite wisdom, embarrassed me and said, hey, David Briggs is in the house and we're going to get him up to play Home on Monday. That's another great song from Glenn. It was One More Time with Feeling. It was fantastic.
Oh, that is wonderful. And when I look at the various guitarists that were in Little River Band, I think definitely you and Rick Formosa were my favourites. I felt that Stephen Houston was a bit too fancy. I love the way that you just were so true to the song, and, I loved how tight you played. I mean, how much do you incorporate that ethos into your guitar playing, particularly back then?
My job as the lead guitar player was to provide some of the extra melodic hooks into the songs, inject those things into the songs, and make them individual in their identity for the tunes. And that's really what I tried to do. And it was a variety of styles of guitar playing. My job was to give the songs extra melody and identity and keep it simple and commercial, and I was very aware that was what it was about.
We're going to end our interview with the song that you co-wrote with B. Birtles, Happy Anniversary in 1977, got to number 16 on the US Billboard charts. And we'll remind everyone that David Briggs is a lecturer at Victoria University. He's also got his own production workshop recording studio, and he was the second guitarist with Little River Band. So just give us a bit of background, David, on Happy Anniversary.
Well, Happy Anniversary really came, I'm letting the cat out of the bag, we were playing with Boz Scaggs, and he's got this song called Lowdown. Beeb was saying, what are the chords that he's using in that? And so I showed Beeb the inversions of the chords. He just used to play those two chords, very similar to Lowdown. And George was sort of messing around on the bass. Do-da, bo-da-do-do. Okay, the bass line. Beeb was living in Bourne, and we had a rehearsal over at his place, and he had the two chords, and he really didn't know what else to do with it. And I played, a series of half a dozen chords and sang this lyric, there's a lesson here to learn if your baby ups and leaves you, okay, which was the bridge, which was the part that I wrote. And so that's how that song came together.
What a great story. David Briggs, thank you for joining us on 101 FM. We really love your music and all you've contributed to the Australian music scene. Keep going, mate. I know you're 73 years young. I know you're going to be going on for a lot longer.
Thank you so much, Jason. Lovely to talk.